Hello everyone and welcome along to an impromptu edition of the TII podcast because Rangers finally have a new manager. Well, maybe not quite yet. We're in the next 24 or 48 hours. Rangers will have a new manager, and as it's been reported for the last couple of days, it will indeed be Russell Martin. A very varied reaction to the announcement and to the news. A lot of people remain unconvinced by it, I think it's fair to say. But Iain, welcome along to this podcast. How are you feeling about the appointment? What's your initial reaction?
Yeah, mixed reactions, putting it very mildly, isn't it? It seems overwhelmingly negative across the fan base. I personally am quite happy with it. I know I'm in the minority there. Set myself up for this pod to get clipped and watched back in 6 months' time when we're looking for a new manager, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think it was the best shortlist of candidates that we've had. I don't think there was an outstanding candidate at any point from all the names that were rumoured, all the links that were there. The only one other than this that got me excited was Farioli, and I don't even think he was interviewed or in the running in any shape or form. So for me, the Russell Martin one makes a lot of sense. Also, we'll delve into why I think that and more on this podcast, but I don't think it's as catastrophic as people are sort of making out at this point. Obviously, this could all come back to bite us, but there's not a single manager we could have took in that might not have had that same result. So
why do you think? Iain, why do you think people have had that sort of polarised reaction? It feels fairly normal as a Rangers fan to watch people pick a side at an extreme. Not people don't tend to sit in the centre and say, "Oh, not sure about it, but we'll see how it goes." They tend to go, "Absolutely love it, absolutely hate it." Why do you think there is such an extreme reaction? And I suppose social media isn't every Rangers fan, and social media is it's a small percentage of Rangers fans, but the reaction you see on social media is very much at the extreme.
Yeah, and those are the voices you hear loudest, obviously, so I get all that, but I don't think his playing career at Rangers is doing him any favours here. If this was a guy who had progressed through a few clubs, different levels, got a team promoted, always had a very bad time in the Premiership, we can't step over that, but that was because he stuck to this way of playing, this philosophy that we've not really had a manager like double down on for many years. So if it was just the manager side of it, I think it'd be a bit more welcome. But the 6 months he had at Ibrox didn't exactly go very well. It wasn't exactly a standout player. He's made some comments about his time at Ibrox as well, about the pressure and things like that, which again, in hindsight, probably wasn't smart on his part to do. But if you try and step away from that, which I know is hard, but if you try and look at just the manager and just the profile of guy that's coming in, I'm quite happy with it. I know a lot aren't. I know a lot of people are going to be very against it and thinks he doesn't warrant a job at our level yet. I get all that, but the main thing for me is I really just hope people give him some time and let him try something, because if we lose a friendly or two at the start, I feel like people will be on the back foot straight away, as much as they are right now anyway. So just pray people give him some time to see what can come of this.
Yeah, you picked up on a couple of points there. Firstly, Russell Martin player versus Russell Martin the manager, and how we separate that as fans, I guess. And you also kind of picked up on the style of play, which we'll come to. But starting with the first one, as you said, his time at Rangers was unremarkable at best. Really disappointing. It's probably a fair way to describe it. I think he's how this. I think he's, as you said, he's said that as much himself. But how much of the reaction do you think is down to how people remember him as the player rather than how people have seen? Because he obviously started out MK Dons, went to Swansea, went to Southampton. He's worked his way up the ranks. He's not a manager that got a chance at top of the Championship club or bottom of the Premier League club and has just kind of hovered around that. He's worked his way up through the ranks in the English Football League, which isn't easy. There's a lot of clubs. There's the Championship's obviously one of the most wild leagues there are in terms of how competitive it is, and he's been successful at two clubs there. So how much do you think Russell Martin, the player, and people's opinion of him is feeding into this reaction?
Yeah, I mean, it is natural, to be fair, because it would work the opposite way. If someone like Stephen Davis was randomly getting the job, people would be bought into it because of how good his Rangers career was, not even looking at what someone's done at a coaching or managerial level. So it can work both ways in that sense, but it's spot on. I think people just see this guy that, like I said at the start, came up to Glasgow, didn't have a great time, didn't look very confident as a Rangers player, and think, well, if he can't do it as a player, he's not going to do it as a manager. But it's quite interesting for me, this whole manager versus head coach thing, whether that does affect things differently. But for me, that's a big reason why Gerrard didn't get far in this interview process, because you can't see him being a coach. You'd think he'd want all the power, all the final say in signings, all the final say on who gets sold kind of thing. Whereas this setup seems more like the head coach coaches the players, picks the team, sets philosophies and tactics and this kind of stuff, which I think is what's maybe pushed it in Russell Martin's favour. I mean, I get it because as a centre-back, as a player, he seemed quite a hoofball type guy, just got rid of it, tried to kind of put his head on things. Even for Scotland for many years, it's not as if he was known for his short game and his passing kind of thing. So the manager seemed a totally different person or style of player to what the player Russell Martin was. So that's what's exciting me a bit more, because we've all done it. We've all sat in Ibrox for many years now and watched individuals do things on the pitch. It's not been a team collective. It's not been a style. It's not been great team goals. How often do we not score because a player doesn't step up? It's obviously been Tavernier for years. It was Czerny for the most of last season. If these guys don't do something on their own, Rangers don't tend to win those plucky games, those games that we drop points against lower teams. Whereas you'd hope Russell Martin comes in, sets a team up, sets a style up, and we score team goals, we score nice team moves, kind of stuff. I know when he was at MK Dons, they scored like a 60-odd pass move, and it was the most passes leading to a goal that season. I think they had the third best possession stats in Europe, behind like Barca and Arsenal. Like, these stats matter in modern football, and as much as we don't just want to see passing for passing's sake, which again a lot of people are saying this is going to be, it's a style he's not really tried for years, so it might be successful.
Yeah, I think we'll come on to style of play and some of the more of the detail behind it. Keen to bring in some of the comments we've seen, which is varied, I think is the best way to describe it.
Positive one. Let's keep the positive train going.
George Gibson, hi guys on this sad night. William saying, mental, the guy isn't even in the door, and the so-called internet support have already slated the guy. Airwolf saying, fans moan Clement had no style, now they've got Martin, and moaning again. Jack the Lad saying, I didn't want him, but the reaction has been an absolute disgrace. Gibson 97, this will fail mainly because the fans won't give him the chance to succeed, have to get behind him. Loudrop 55, absolutely devastated. And I want to pick up on this one because it kind of takes us nicely into the discussion around the kind of process that's been going through. But Tommy's Cardigan says the shortlist seemed very varied. Now, if you take reports at face value, it seems that Russell Martin, Davide Ancelotti, and I was going to say Davide Ancelotti Jr., but I keep calling him Ancelotti Jr., so I don't have to say Davide. And then Steven Gerrard were the final three. There were obviously other names that were rumoured around about that. Marco Rosa, Francesco Farioli. What did you make of the shortlist that there was? Actually, to me, a lot of the more recent day stuff, so in terms of Spanish press saying Ancelotti had the job.
Yep.
Media down in England saying that Russell Martin was still in the case. Rangers coming out and saying no one had been offered the job yet. It felt very much, in the early stages, it felt very much like people were scrambling about just for names or trying to find anyone. And then it felt as we got closer and closer to the end, it was agents that were influencing journalists.
Yeah.
And nothing really was coming out of the club. And I think a big part of that as well is obviously with the new owners and them just being in the door. I don't imagine many journalists, if any at all, will have contacts within that organisation or Rangers to get some insight from it. And that's probably why it has been that way, and why every day it's felt like the newspapers are reporting on who's top of the betting odds today, because they actually don't have any substance to it. Yeah. And it's been interesting to watch this work, hasn't it?
It's like you say, it's a strange one, because normally with these situations you kind of hear of the 3 or 4 names and you hear it getting whittled down and kind of who's getting it a good few days or a week or so before who actually gets it. I think with Clement it was between him and Muscat, and I remember sitting on podcast with yourself thinking, we all kind of think it's Clement, it's just waiting for that announcement kind of thing, whereas this process has been absolutely razor tight the whole way, and I like that. That's the way it kind of should be. We shouldn't really know the ins and outs of how this has been progressing. We don't know how big that initial shortlist was. There was obviously chat a few weeks ago about, was it Will Still had turned down a chance? I don't think that was to get the job. That was maybe just to join the process and be interviewed and kind of start that ball rolling. But that could have been a list of 15, 20, 50 names for all we know. And it's obviously been whittled down and down and down until, as you're saying, Ancelotti and Martin were the two kind of forerunners. And the comment before is quite true. It's hard to say there's a certain philosophy or style we're going for, because Ancelotti-wise, he's never had a club. That's why I was quite surprised how pro Ancelotti people were when it was that kind of shoot.
I think I've seen some people, and I'll call it a very own Craig Hughes, that came in and said that it was something on the lines that Ancelotti you felt could take you to the stars, or it could crash and burn, but it could go like one of those ways. He said he felt that Russell Martin was quite middling. There wasn't a lot of excitement around him, but you kind of knew he would bring something to the table, so he's probably unlikely to fail. I think that's what it was. Just people saw a real up and coming coach, got excited about it, got behind it. The more they heard about it, I mean, we've seen a lot of people as well saying they actually took some time and just tried to convince themselves that Ancelotti was the right person rather than actually believing that he was. It seems like people just wanted something to get excited about rather than whether they thought he was the right guy or not. And we've seen it before. I mean, Michael Beale was fans' choice, and that crashed and burned very quickly. So, what do you think? How much do you think fan opinion kind of comes into it? And I guess what merits do you think fan opinion has at this stage of the process?
I think with our old board, it had a massive impact. I think you kind of saw that for certain decisions and things that were done over the course of the last few years. But one thing we read, and it was more from like Leeds fans and Leeds podcasts, these kind of things, that were saying this board and these guys will do things that the fans don't like and think what he's doing. And I think with Leeds, it was the example of selling like 3 or 4 of their main men, rebuilding, and then not spending last January when they were pushing for promotion. And obviously they proved to be right, didn't need to do that in the end. So there is going to be moments, and there's going to be a lot more over the next few years, whether it's sponsorships or whether it's different match day experiences, players, coaches, all these kind of stuff's going to come into it. The board do, and we simply go, what are you doing that for? We can't get on board with that. Don't make sense of that. But I'd rather they were brave enough to say, this is our guy, we're backing him. They will know that the fans are kind of on the back foot straight away. They're not daft. They're going to see tweets and messages and all these things of fans not being straight up for it, like from the get-go. But if they see all that, and likewise Russell Martin, if he sees all that and still thinks, I can fix this, I can turn this around, I do quite like that. I like that arrogance and that self-assurance that, yeah, you might not be happy with it, but we're going for it anyway. And it's a good point you made about Ancelotti, and that probably being like the sexier appointment and the more interesting one, maybe because of the surname and what clubs he's been at. But the fact is that there's not a single manager that could have come in here that would have guaranteed success. Could have put Mourinho, Pep, anybody in there, it could still all crash and burn. So whether it's Martin, Ancelotti, I'm quite confident, quite comfortable that the board have had all these interviews that obviously took their time, as we've known for the last few weeks, and whether it's been a 4 or 5 interviews separately for this and going into philosophies and what they're going to come up against and the playing squad, the budgets, they've obviously drilled down to know, like, this is our guy. And obviously there's been a link with Como as well, so you don't know how much of an effect that's had in all this.
Yeah, let's talk about that process. I think our understanding from some different people has said that effectively the shortlisted candidates, if we go with the top 3 that we mentioned earlier, in terms of Russell Martin, Gerrard, Ancelotti Jr., went through 2 stages of really detailed interviews, with the third interview really focused on the squad. I think within that they had to present the strategy and how they would break down low blocks, how they would instill a high press into the team, and then different tactical setups for different levels of game. It feels like that's more detailed than a lot of the processes we've seen unfold from Rangers in the past. How encouraging is that? That it's gone into that sort of level of detail. Before you answer that, I'm going to bring up Dado Purzo Boy Boots comment here where he says, I've given my season ticket away to my nephew. It's literally been like 20 minutes since it's been reported.
Yeah, it's key for me because, as I said, we've all sat in Ibrox for so long, so many years, and just not really understood what we're watching. Whether it was Gio with that horseshoe thing, whether it was Beale and just putting players where they just don't belong, or Clement and that whole lack of style, lack of philosophy, which it just doesn't work for me. Like modern football, yes, we have good players. Well, we have better players than most of the teams we play. So as I say, you get little moments and you see a player stand up and do something that wins you a game. We get that, but you don't have that collective thing. And yeah, we're fine in Europe for it because we can all raise our game and have a good night and the crowd get behind you and stuff. But the main focus for me is winning the league title. It's kind of your bread and butter as a Rangers fan. And if you can't do that without this philosophy, without these styles, I think it's quite reassuring that the board have obviously noticed that problem. And you touched on it there, the high pressing, the styles of play, the low block problem that we've had for so long. They've obviously thought, right, you need to, as a manager here, you need to go and present to me how you're going to fix that. And that's what reassures me. If they've done that, watch Russell Martin, give his presentations, give his ideas, give his philosophies, and thought, yeah, we're buying into this. And that's the thing with Russell Martin. Like, yes, the clubs haven't been a roaring success he's been at. He's done quite well, I would say, still. But you listen to him talk about football, you see him Monday Night Football, the interview with Gary Lineker, and yeah, we can all talk a good game, but he seems to have a pretty good profile to get on these interviews and to share his thoughts, which might mean nothing if you can't then go to Motherwell and win the game, but he's got every chance if he can show they can do that. But I just really, I keep saying it, I really hope people do buy into it and at least give them the chance to then fail maybe, and then we can all say, okay, wrong appointment, whatever, but the negativity is mad for me so far.
Yeah, it's obviously the first big decision. We were only on the podcast on whatever night it was. I've lost track of days at this stage. We're on the podcast a few days ago talking about the 49ers enterprises confirmed and the consortium confirming the majority stake that they have taken over in the club, and they've put the manager in place pretty quickly off the back of that. Firstly, are you encouraged by the order that this has happened in, and I guess the almost seamless way that it's all just falling in line with each other? Is that encouraging, that you feel like there's been a real plan here and there's been a real understanding of how this all works?
Yeah, it's good for me because this is my worry. Like, we knew the board takeover wasn't going to be in until like late May, early June at best. So the fact that happened so soon for me is a massive plus because none of these steps can happen formally until that's happened. But it does just show you that Farewell, the 49ers and everyone who had to be involved clearly was, because the whole Niels Coppin out, Dan Purdy in move was within 24 hours of them being officially like the table kind of thing on the job. So that wouldn't have been a split decision on that day. That's been, right, when we get in, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. That, like we're saying now, the managers in X phase, and within the week there, it seems done. It looks like tomorrow morning, that formal announcement. So again, everything's took place. It's been very thorough. It's just the way a proper football club should be run. And I think it's easy to take that for granted, but after the last few years that we've had and the chaos and the delays just in every formal process, that's been a stumbling block for me for many years. And you hope that now you'll be managing in, okay, what players do we need to get rid of? Who do we need to bring in? And you hope there's shortlist there ready to tackle and bring in, because, again, you guys talked about it last Friday night, there's these European games that will come around very fast. It's 5 weeks away now or so. So those games are massive for us, and you need to have a comfortable manager in place who's been able to coach some of these philosophies we're talking about. Otherwise, there's no point. So, yep, it's been as seamless and as straightforward as you'd hope for, which is a credit to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's talk about playing style. Let's get a bit into that one. We spoke about how competitive the Championship has been. He's built really competitive teams at both Championship clubs in England he's been at, in terms of Swansea and Southampton. Southampton he obviously took up to the Premier League as a result of that style of play. I think across the board, whatever podcast you listen to that he's been on, whatever article you read about him, whatever you hear about him, he sticks to a very clear 4-3-3, and I realise that will probably give people the absolute fear that he sticks to that formation, given our recent history with that one. But he does stick to that. Before I move on from that, how Are you happy he sticks to a particular formation? We've seen the positives and negatives of that in the past under Gerrard, under Beale, and under they've all stuck to not necessarily a 4-3-3, but they've all stuck to the strategy that they believed in, and it's caused us massive issues that they didn't have the flexibility to kind of adjust to different styles of game, to different levels of team, etc. The fact that he sticks to that very clear 4-3-3, is that encouraging to you, or is it you're a bit wary about how rigid that seems?
Yeah, I'm trying to be as pro Russell Martin as possible, if that's not coming across already. But that is the one.
I think someone said that they're leaving us to celebrate. So I think it's definitely coming across.
Yeah, that is the one thing though that I'm a bit not stressed but anxious about, because there is very different environments at Rangers. There's the Old Firm game, there's European nights, but there is the Motherwell away, there's the Ross County at home. These are very different matches game to game. The main thing for me is that the playing squad suits what Russell Martin's trying to do, because that was Clement's problem. I don't think there was a problem with the way he set up and having like attack midfield and having winners, but if you don't have winners that are good enough, you can't play with winners. If you don't have fullbacks that bomb forward and you're relying on fullbacks, it doesn't work. Whereas Clement just never seemed to grasp that. And obviously there could have been targets he wanted that he couldn't get. There could have been sales he didn't want to make kind of thing over the journey. But that's the thing for me, that if you are looking at a squad, you need to build a formation around that squad rather than doing it the opposite way around. That's just key for me. So the main thing is going to be recruitment here. And that would have been the same for whoever was coming and going kind of thing, because it doesn't matter what manager comes in, if you don't have players that are good enough for the style that they're going to play in and for this league, and reliable enough to play in this league is another massive issue. It's kind of all redundant anyway, so it's not going to matter if we don't get the right players in there. But for me, the style thing with Russell Martin does work, because I was watching one of the podcasts with a Southampton fan that was on it, just trying to kind of do your digging into Russell Martin, and it wasn't so much it was a case of just passing it for passing's sake. It was every pass had to be to someone in space, which is why it goes to defenders a lot, because they're in space. So you need your forward players and your midfielders to be very brave to then get some space for themselves and know that they're going to have someone right beside them, they're going to be pressed, but then confident enough and good enough ability to handle that. Again, that's where recruitment comes straight back into it, because right now we don't have players probably good enough, bar maybe Raskin, Diomande, the two guys who are obviously linked to leaving, sadly, but those are the only two I think would work very well with Russell Martin. The rest of the squad just doesn't have that for me right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So he's got a very clear 4-3-3 high pressing style of play. Interestingly, some stats that formerly of TII John Walker put up from some of from one of the CPD events he attended as from the SFA coaching badges. He said that Russell Martin's teams are the best passers and most accurate passers in the league for each of the last 5 seasons that he's been a manager. He implements his style of play quickly at all previous clubs. He has undergone massive sweeping changes at every club he's been at. Southampton, I believe, had just been relegated when he took over, 19 players left, and he managed to win the first game of the season with a whole new team with 80% possession, I believe, which is wild. His teams are featured in the top 3 for chances created, shots at goal, XG, and big chances missed. Some would say that if he keeps Cyril Dessers, then he'll continue to
chances missed. My head went down.
But outside of that, I think the encouraging part for me, particularly having watched so much of his last season, is the chances created part, because it felt like we weren't creating chances last season. We felt like the dominant Rangers teams that you've watched in the past, we were just nowhere near that over the last 12 months, at least, if not for longer than that. It felt like we were having to score or be pretty clinical with the chances that we had, because we weren't actually creating a volume of them, and we weren't really creating clear-cut chances. Very rarely. I can't remember many games where it felt like Rangers were battering down the door to score a goal and get ahead. What do you make of all those kind of stats that we're seeing? I guess it's more we'll see it when it comes to fruition and how it's implemented and all that sort of stuff. And I know people will say Rangers is very different to many other clubs because they will dominate vast majority of games, vast majority of possession. Teams will sit in, teams will try and hit us on the counter attack, and that's how they'll play for the full game. What do you make of those stats? I find them fairly encouraging, to be honest. As I said, totally that chances created and shots at goal. Yeah, I think that, and how quickly he's managed to implement the style as well, I think really encouraging.
He's done that in 3 different clubs that he's been at. It's not as if it's just the one club he had that was a better team than the rest of the league. He's done this relentlessly, whether he was the best team in the league or the worst team in the league. And I think that's why it's quite harsh when people bring up the win percentage when you're dealing with a Southampton in the Premier League. That's very different to Southampton in the Championship. When you're favourites most week, you've probably got the best playing squad, which he's going to have here. Like, people, for me, aren't just kind of correlating together because possession can be easy to keep, especially at Rangers. It's what you do with the ball, obviously, that matters. But there's been games this season, I think Dundee United and Motherwell came to Ibrox this year and had more possession than us. That is mental. That should never happen. I'm sure when it Pittodrie, it was the same for them. That shouldn't happen to a Rangers team. The players we've got should be able to keep the ball a lot better than the opposition 99% of the time domestically. So we haven't done that. It's easy to say, oh, Rangers will create more chances, we'll do this, do that because they've got better players, but we haven't been. So I don't understand where that narrative comes from. And then, again, I touched on it just there. It's if you've got the best players in the league and you can make them play as a team, that's key. That's again, I hate bringing up Celtic in these podcasts, but that's what they do. They just pass a team off the park. Clever passing, brave passing, clever movement, score 3-4 goals. And there's been a few comments even there and a lot on Twitter saying about how he's defensively a bit ropey, set pieces aren't great, but that's a problem for Rangers just now because we usually score a goal or two. So if you lose a goal or two in a game, it's a nightmare. If you win 5-1, doesn't matter if you lost someone for a corner. Like, if you create that many chances, you will score goals, even with Odessa's up front. You will score goals. So if you get a few goals, and then there's so many things to come in the back of that, because if you're a few goals ahead, you can bring in the youth players, you can rest players, and it's just luxuries that we've not been able to do for 3-4 years now, because we're always absolutely going in the mile in these games. It's always 90 minutes of close one goal in it because we just don't make those chances up. And that's why people hate Dessler so much, because he misses a couple of chances, and that's the only couple of chances we've made. So if Russell Martin brings those stats to Ibrox, we will score goals, we will win games. It's just so key he does that early on because he needs a good start. Like, you can see in these comments, like, a lot of people aren't going to buy into it unless they get brought round to it. It's not just going to be a 1-0 win here or there that gets them more time. It's going to be properly good performances and the good results to match.
Yeah, I feel like we are the opposite of the comments and have been fairly positive so far. The vast majority of the comments are particularly negative. What are the downsides to this, Ian? What are the bits of this that give you concern that or make you just second guess it a little bit?
There's a couple. The whole tactical inflexibility is one thing, because if something's not working, if we are like 0-0 in a game or 1-0 down, I don't see Russell Martin as the type that would just throw another striker on or just play long ball or try and change what he's doing. He will double down. It's very, very Mark Warburton-like. What was it? Plan B is to do plan A better. That old cliche that comes up. But I wasn't so against that, to be honest. It was more just he never had the players that would work to do that kind of style. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but there will be bad moments because of that. It's just undoubted. And again, the main sort of negative, I guess, for me with Russell Martin is that his players need to be a certain way to work. It's just not going to work if you have guys that don't want the ball, that can't pass the ball, that aren't high pressing. If you don't have the squad to do that, it's going to be a disaster. And like I say, this Rangers squad of 20 odd players, probably 3 or 4 of them would suit a team that plays high press, that plays direct football, that plays that brave way. We just don't have the squad, and we're not going to sell 15 bodies in one summer. So if you don't do that, it's really, really vital that every sign that comes in hits the ground running, and that's instant pressure on all those guys.
I think all of that is fair. I'll come in with the some of the wild comments, I guess, that we're seeing. clicked on comment there. Titwab saying this takeover is going to be a disaster. Totally underwhelmed. Is this? I know that the 49ers Enterprises have been in charge of Leeds for a while. They've got a particularly passionate fan base as well. NFL fans can be as wild as any. What do you think they'll make of this reaction to their first kind of big decision? I guess everything's been fairly supportive towards them so far throughout the whole process. Everyone's been really encouraging and welcoming of the fact that they're investing in Rangers, what they're doing, hope for the future in terms of what they can deliver for us and in terms of on the field and off the field success. This just seems to be a very quick first negative, but a very negative reaction from the fans. What do you think they will make of this?
I actually don't think okay. From what I've been reading about Leeds and stuff.
I'm kind of the same view. I'm not sure that they'll.
Yeah, I think they'll be confident in their decision making. It's not like one guy's deciding this. This is like a panel of board members who have all agreed this is our guy, and we have to trust that. I mean, this is the thing I keep going back to. There was no surefire way that we were going to be successful, regardless of who comes in. Doesn't matter. Like, it could have been anyone, and they could have failed. So this is all about putting your faith in someone. I think it's quite important, the statement that comes out alongside this announcement. It can't just be a Russell Martin, X-year deal, these coaches are coming in, we wish them all the best. I'm really hoping it's a detailed, we've gone through this process, we know this about him, he's told us this. There's quite a detailed reasoning behind it, just to at least let a few more fans buy in and say, okay, I understand what that's saying, I'm prepared to give it the time. And if we're prepared to give it the time, you can at least support them until you have a reason not to. Because that's the thing for me. Like, a lot of people are saying that the takeover's now, like, the mood is now down, considering how high it was last week after the takeover. I just don't get that, to be honest, because he's not done anything. Like, if you go to a few friendlies like we saw last year with Clermont and you see those terrible performances, like we all remember Birmingham away and watching that game when we were a week or two away from the European games and thinking, what is going on here? That game in Holland we played when it was
like a park, wasn't it?
And we couldn't pass together. You thought at that point something is not right here, and you kind of tried to gloss over it, but it never got better. If we see friendlies and some early performances of European games go badly, I get it. Negativity. I'll be negative. I'll be sitting in the stands complaining just like everyone else. But until you get that moment, how can you be so negative about this? How do you know how it's going to go? There has been extensive research into selecting a candidate here, and as I said right at the start, it's not exactly been an A list of managers who are going to come to Rangers right now because of the wages we're going to give, because of the state of the club, because it's an exciting time, I think, to be a Rangers fan, but the uncertainty maybe around the club and what we're going to do this season. So it's not been a massive list of brilliant managers. It's had to be a thorough, this guy ticks most of the boxes we want for him, and hope he does as best he can.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to look forward in a bit of the bigger picture. We've kind of spoken about style of play, we've spoken about the process. What do you think that this kind of signals, I guess, about the way forward not only on the pitch but off the pitch as well, in terms of structure? It's Kevin Thelwell's first big decision in there. Dan Purdy's obviously come in this week as well and will be heavily involved in the recruitment side of things. Get Russell Martin in as head coach, not manager. Head coach, they were very clear that's what it would be. What do you think this team, this group of newly appointed people, can deliver at Rangers?
I hope they deliver success. Obviously, that's what we all want. But I hope they actually deliver some structure for once, because there's been too much change. I think last podcast I was saying this, I went on a rant about this as well, but you can't build success and build foundations if the guys at the top keep leaving every 5 minutes. I don't mean the board, because the board were pretty consistent for the last few years. It's more the head of recruitment, your chief scouts, your head doctors, your director of football, your technical, all these guys at Rangers just seem to kind of dot about different levels and then leave. Somebody comes in, dots about, leaves. Like, you can't build success that way. And I hope now it's a case of the majority of people at senior level at Rangers are going to be here for a really long time. If the manager has to change at some point, if Russell Martin does brilliantly this year, wins the league, has that great style of play, there'll be suitors down in England that come calling, and he'll probably be off. Like that could absolutely happen over the next few years. But you hope there's then a new guy that comes in, and it's just a change of head coach. It's not XYZ also is leaving, by the way, and they left 4 months ago and they've been headhunted. We need the guys that are here for the long haul, so that you buy into something, you have projects. And with the amount of problems at the club just now, it's not just on the park, it's your academy, it's your scouting departments, it's the physical side of it in terms of players coming here and getting injured and being out for so long. There's so many problems that need to get fixed, and they will only be fixed if people come in, stay here, and fix those problems. And again, players will change, managers will change, but for me, everything outside of that should remain pretty consistent year on year. And hopefully, this is now the stage we've got to with these guys.
Before I get on to next steps and obviously starting looking forward to the summer and transfer window, I think we're only 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks to pre-season starts. So it'll be here before we know it. Russell Martin was obviously heavily linked with the Leicester job. They've just been relegated from the Premier League. I think they're looking at getting rid of Ruud van Nistelrooy as their manager. Is the fact that he was linked at that level of job an encouragement to you?
It's probably our level right now. Excuse me. I think if a Premier League team comes calling for anyone, they're picking the Premier League team over Rangers. I mean, we all know how big a club Rangers is. We know how great Rangers can be. But in terms of like a glamorous job and an easy job, it's certainly not that right now. It's not a job you can come into and guarantee success because of how the last few years have gone. So I think Leicester, given the kind of budgets you'd expect them to have, they'll probably come straight back up. That's quite not an easy job at all, but I think they've got a right good chance of going back up regardless of who goes in there. So I think that's maybe a brave thing. I don't know if he's turned down Leicester in any way, but he seemed pretty close to that job. And it's as if he's put Rangers first, which is pretty good, because I think Ancelotti, reading between the lines, has maybe done the opposite of that. I don't know if he's maybe not been picked and then going for Como, but for me it seems like he's been waiting on what Inzaghi's doing at Inter, what Fabregas is then going to do at Como, and maybe has that as his first choice. Like that, I mean, like I say, it's just reading between the lines a little bit. It's just going off kind of what you see here and there. But
to be fair, Como's pretty nice. So
it's probably nicer than in Glasgow. You know, we have to say that. But for me, that's a good sign, because you don't want someone coming here and not being sure if they should be here. Whereas Russell Martin's, again from the outside, he's seemed to have this as his first choice. Maybe seeing the potential, seeing what he could bring here. Because if you have success here, we won't remember this podcast, we won't remember these comments. If he wins the league, he'll get an instant hero. And I think he knows that. He has a good grasp of Scottish football. He's played here, played for Scotland for so long. He's got really good friends up here. So he knows what this could be. And I think, again, I've said it multiple times already, we have to give him the chance to be that success.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As I said, we're 2.5, 3 weeks away from the start of pre-season. We know the squad still needs a huge overhaul. We've obviously seen the off the pitch overhaul well underway at the moment. It'll be interesting to see who comes in as part of Russell Martin's coaching staff. There's been a few different interesting names that we've heard. I think Maurice Ross was in amongst there. I think Stephen Naismith has been in amongst there as well. I think there'll be some really interesting reactions to any of those coming in, but I'll find that out over the next couple of days. But we know there's got to be a huge on the pitch overhaul as well. Style of play we've spoken about, but the personnel. Iain, I think we are pretty much in the same boat in terms of we believe we do have a good 4, 5, 6 players in the squad that we just need. They just need to be, one, in the right system, but two, surrounded by players that complement the way that they play. But I wanted to bring in the Bros comment here, and particularly the first part of it, not necessarily the second part, but he says, I don't get the forced positivity. 3 weeks from pre-season, we need 7 to 9 new players, new manager choice with no European experience, we'll win background. We can all see where this is headed. In terms of that, we need 7 to 9 new players. I guess I'd probably expect more than that to leave through the exit door in the coming weeks. The first Champions League qualifier is 22nd of July, I think, off the top of my head, which gives us around 7 weeks or so to put this change in place from the point the new manager is appointed. How confident are you that can all happen in that short space of time, and we can be we can be a team that's not, as you say, the same as the one that was playing in the park at Ajax in pre-season, or the one that faced Birmingham last year? How confident are you we can be a team that's not only competitive at that Champions League level at that stage, but is confident enough to go on and win and take us through to the stages beyond that?
Yeah, something, again, keeping this positivity train going, that's all we can do here, is a bit different from usual, is that usually we need to sell players to then understand our budget, to then go and buy players. That's why we always leave things so late, because we don't know if player A is going to leave, then get us a couple of million, we can then spend that on this guy, kind of thing. Whereas we've seen in the statement, there's already been an initial investment to top up whatever was there already of 20 odd million. So not saying we're going to spend 20 million over the next few weeks, but at least if a player comes up who's within the budget, who fits all these profiles, who's a good age for the whole trading model thing, we can probably just go and get them. And maybe not just one, maybe it's 3 or 4. And if, as we said, there's maybe, again, I'm not going to list off everyone that I like in the squad, but it's not a long list. But there's a decent midfield. We've got Igaman there. There's a couple of defenders who will certainly do a job, at least at this level. If you then complement that with the 4 or 5 signings, I think suddenly you've got a decent team there. Not the squad yet, by all means. It's very much reliant on 11, 12 players turning up. But I think that would be good enough for the first couple of rounds, hopefully. Again, when it comes to like the 4th qualifying round, we've got, was it Benfica or Club Rouge? I think regardless of who we bring in, those will be very difficult ties to try and navigate. So not too confident how they go either way. But at least if you build up some positive momentum, get some early signings. Again, a key is getting a few out the door. It's quite reassuring. We saw those like proper rumours, the Ridvan rumours, the Cifuentes deal looks pretty close, albeit it's only a couple of million, but it helps. It certainly tops up that investment.
Yeah, it adds up.
Exactly, and that's what you need to do. It frees up a lot of wages. Again, you talk about guys like Butland, maybe does Tavernier move on, that suddenly would save close to 80 grand a week just on those 2 alone. So there's a lot of moving to be done. And obviously, this we talked about it, it's been a case of get the boardroom right, get the directors right, get the manager right. It's now just left to the playing squad. It's the most important part, but we've got 5-6 weeks, as you say, to actually drill that down, get a couple of friendlies in our belt, and try and build a good squad there. And again, you've got to hope that the guys in charge, your Dan Purdy's, he'll have a shortlist. He'll have many shortlists. We've got a Leeds connection now. They will have shortlist of guys. We have a few loans come either way as well, aside of that. And you could look at it going, okay, that's a decent squad we've suddenly built there. And you've got another month on top of that to properly drill that down and finalise a squad of players rather than just a first 11.
Yeah, definitely. We're at the start of a new era for Rangers, not only with the new ownership, but also with the new manager. It's going to be really interesting over the next few weeks as we make our way through what's set to be a really busy summer for Rangers. And myself, Iain, and the TII team will all be across all with reaction pods, with giving our views on new signings, potential new signings, everything that goes on at Rangers. So make sure that you have subscribed to the TII YouTube channel or wherever you get your audio podcast, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. And make sure you don't miss out on any content along with that. But my thanks to you all for listening. My thanks to Iain for joining us tonight at very short notice, it has to be said. So thank you again, Iain, and until next time, goodbye.